I'm so excited that we have Bob Lamm, partner at Gunster down in Southern Florida, back with us today. We're going to talk about market rumors. Bob's been in-house at 6 different companies. He's now helping companies at a position in a law firm. He's a great guy. I've known him for a long time. I'm Brock Romanek today on Zippy Point. So Bob, thanks again for being with us again. As I just mentioned to you, I'd have you on for every video if I could, but I can't.
You're very kind.
Or my dad,
and I do
or
it.
my brother, or my son, maybe. If we were living together. All right, so in my Vid-Guide about Reg FD and rumors, I talk about how hard it is to determine whether the rumor starts from within your company and the pressure of the stock price moving one way or another. And you might end up saying something of substance a lot since you can't quite tell whether you have a duty to speak. And then your blog from May last year came out saying something similar, but not necessarily for legal reasons, but for practical reasons. So the optics of how it all plays out in the market when a company clams up when the rumor might be true, but speaks loudly when it's not. So can you explain a little bit what you were talking about?
Yeah, I think it was largely based on my experience, which was that when a rumor is false, the companies tend to squeal like the proverbial stuck pig. Not that I've ever heard a stuck pig squeal, but they're all over the place saying that's a false rumor, that's a false rumor, and this is not a universal truism, but very often when the rumor is true, that's all of a sudden when the company says we don't respond to rumors or we don't comment on rumors, or I have no comment. And the problem with that is that it's very transparent. Nobody's fooled by that. People know that no comment generally means the rumor's true, and it's frankly company's own fault because they set themselves up to be disbelieved when they say they have no comment. So I've certainly given advice to clients that the most they can do is say something like no comment or its equivalent, and there are lots of equivalents that you can offer. But along with that, because of optics, not because of legal reasons, or maybe because of communications rather than legal reasons, I find it's helpful if the company can at least give an explanation of why it's not in a position to comment. Very often a company gets hit with a lawsuit, what seems like a major lawsuit. We don't comment on pending litigation. Well, of course they comment on pending litigation. But at that stage of the game, they probably haven't had the time to absorb what it is, whether it's serious, specious, is it a strike suit, is it legitimate? So it's okay to give some explanation. We just got served. We really haven't had the chance to evaluate the legitimacy of these claims. And when we do, we'll publicize that. We'll get back to you. We'll file our response in court, and you can read it for yourself, whatever the answer may be. And I think, and I've been told by communications experts that that's a much better approach to at least explain why you can't talk about it. And there's my phone. So I just think that if you're going to say no comment, at least you should do it the right way and say no comment whether the rumor is true or false. And if you can't comment on it, to try to explain why, because you're destroying your own credibility.
And then you had an interesting comment in your blog about the relationship lawyers have with the communications department and the IR department. And having been in-house myself, I know it's company by company specific how much leverage one department has. It's always sort of a little bit of a turf war. It doesn't have to be called a war, but everyone's got their own role, and reasonable people might disagree. And it's the lawyer's job to be sort of the no person, say no all the time. But I do agree with you what you said in the blog that sometimes lawyers shut out the advice given from these communications professionals and wind up being a little bit too conservative. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one particular corporate crisis, and I won't identify the company, but major corporate crisis where, in effect, the corporate communications person was just shut out of any discussions. She wasn't just shut out by the lawyers, she was basically shut out by management, as well as by the lawyers. The lawyers were sort of unindicted co-conspirators in that case. And the ostensible reason was that they knew that she felt the need to communicate with the media, whatever other outside parties there may have been. And basically, they said they couldn't trust her. And number one, I didn't think that was legitimate. Number two, if they couldn't trust her, why was she in that position? Um, it's important to have somebody that you can trust. And anybody who's watched, I'm going to hark back to the West Wing TV series. Allison Janney played the president's press secretary there. And one of the things that I really liked about that series was that she gave real substantive help to the president to get his message the right way, to let him know what people were thinking about him so he could modify his message accordingly, or at least address the questions or concerns that people had. So, in that case, I think it just shows the merit of having a really good communications person in this crisis that I was referring to, because she was shut out and because she felt an intense need to do her job, which was to communicate. She basically started preparing talking points to be able to respond to the press. And fortunately, I think she ran it by me and I said, these are great. The problem is that they're all incorrect. And we started a process where I would meet with her at 5:30 every day. Not that the day was over then, but maybe her day was close to being over then, and just, try to tell her what was going on. So even if all she was saying was no comment, she'd know where it was coming from. And I think she ended up doing a very good job. I also think that lawyers tend to think of themselves as being experts in wordsmithing, which we are, or most of us are. That doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily mean that we're good at communicating. And in one case, I won't mention the law firm, but it's a very, very well-known law firm, a very well-known senior partner at this very well-known law firm, who would mark up every press release to a fare thee well. It looked like he'd hemorrhaged all over it. It was all full of red ink. And we had hired a very expensive communications firm, and they were getting ticked off at him. And, I find, you're a great lawyer, but back off. If there's a legal problem with this thing, explain what the legal problem is, but let them do their job. And I felt like, who was I to question him? But I felt I had to, because I was caught in the middle. And I've learned a lot of communications techniques from IR and PR people, and I've been told on my good days as a lawyer that one of the reasons I'm good is that I see past the legal requirements and talk about optics. You can do this. There's no legal problem, but it's a bit weird, and you better prepare some FAQs, responses to FAQs, because you're going to get the FAQs. Be prepared to respond why you did this, what the justification is you considered, and so far clients seem to think that's helpful.
That's great stuff. I mean, it's your vast background, and here it's interesting. I mean, you've worked, at 6 different companies, many of them really large, and now I know a lot of your clients tend to be smaller. And then in your blog, you had Adam Epstein, who does have great insights. I agree with you there. But he talks about lack of trading volume and how that plays into how you respond to rumors, and how if you're always saying no comment, then that's going to further reduce your trading volume, and that can really harm a smaller company.
Yeah, well, I mean, as an example, it's a little bit of a departure from your specific question, but bear with me for a second. Just a couple of weeks ago, we got an inquiry from a prospective client asking about doing a reverse merger, becoming a public company. And we declined the representation for a whole bunch of reasons, but one of them was that when we looked at the numbers, we just said, what's the liquidity here? You're going to be a public company, but the functional equivalent of 4 shares are going to be your float, and you can't get volume. You can't get, anybody sells 1 share, your stock price is going to tumble. They buy 1 share, it's going to go through the roof. People don't want to make bets on that kind of thing. So think about liquidity, and that ties into volume. If everything you do basically, puts the talk to the hand up to the investment community, no comment, we're not going to talk, they have no incentive to even be interested in you. So I think communications are important. Some of my smaller public company clients really understand that very well, and they're happy to talk to investors. Well, maybe happy is too strong a term, but they understand that it comes with the territory. Look, I've even seen CEOs of major companies hate doing that so much that even on a telephonic earnings call, you can hear the white knuckles, if that's not mixing metaphors. You really hear them clam up and express a tremendous reluctance to say anything that departs from the script. And that, again, it's not necessarily what they say, it's how they say it, it's their receptivity to questions. Sometimes it comes across as disdain for the analysts and maybe some reporters who are on the call. So, anything you can do, especially when you're a small cap or a mid cap, anything you can do to enhance interest in your stock, which in turn enhances the trading volume, which in turn gets you ultimately to a higher price, is really important. So I think it's important for smaller companies to understand that. And happy always to give a shout out to Adam, because he gets it about as well as anybody I know.
Great stuff. I agree with you completely. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.